expect what the terrorists might be expecting us to do is to fix piecemeal. Since they carried on ceramic knives and things through security, well, we're going to look at the screeners, and we're going to look at the baggage, and we're going to take away steak knives, and we're going to stop curbside check-in, and we cannot do that at the expense of everything else. And Judith Miller brought up a great point. One of the bad scenarios considered within the FAA was actually spreading germ warfare through the use of international flights. These are very clever terrorists, and they do seem to have a fixation with aviation, in part because you can wreak so much terror. So focusing on one thing at the expense of others is very, very dangerous. What the suggestion that I would have for fixing things, at least in the short term and then eventually in the long term, is putting the security under, this is literally national security now on domestic airports, but putting the security under a law enforcement agency, and the one you could put it on rather quickly within the Department of Transportation by transferring the function and eventually building it up is, of course, the Coast Guard, because they guard the ports.
So not the FAA, but...
That's right.
But, all right. What do you make of Continental and Northwest announcing today they're laying back flight schedules, they're cutting flight schedules, Continental laying off 12,000 employees, and the airlines, are all of them, in big, big trouble?
Well, first of all, we've got to remember, as Americans, we tend to have short memories about the airlines. During Desert Storm, obviously, Americans did not want to travel, not only because of the threat, but when we're headed to war. Frivolous travel goes, and also the airlines had a down period in the beginning of the 90s. Now, remember, airlines were in trouble already before, partially because of the horrible conditions we experienced in terms of overcrowding. But what we don't want to see, and I'm very, very disturbed to see this, is the airlines taking advantage of this suffering, asking for bailouts from Congress, asking for Congress literally before the care teams got on the ground to take care of the victims and their families, asking Congress to protect them from responsibility. That is just disgusting to me. This is not the time to be talking about financial protectionism for the airlines. That was a highly, I think, disingenuous move, and fortunately Congress appears to have defeated it.
Thank you, Mary. We'll be calling on you again. Mary Schiavo, a strong critic of the airline industry, and this has not tamed her at all, aviation safety expert, former Inspector General, Department of Transportation. The New York Fire Department held 3 funerals today, its first since Tuesday's terrorist attacks, one of those being mourned, the department's chaplain, Father Michael Judge. He was killed by falling debris as he gave last rites to a dying firefighter. We have a brief look at Father Judge's funeral.
Lord, come and bless us. Bless our minds with the gifts of understanding. Bless our eyes with vision, that we may see our lives and the life that you give us. Bless our ears, that we may hear your words as you speak to us through so many others.
Joining us now outside the Pentagon in Arlington, Virginia, is firefighter Mark Skipper. Been a firefighter for 7 years, including 4 years in the military on crash fire rescue. He's now with the Fort Myer, Virginia Fire Department, one of 3 civilian firefighters on duty at the Pentagon when the plane hit. Where were you when it hit the Pentagon, Mark?
First of all, Larry, I'd like to say that our hearts and prayers go out to the firefighters and their families that were injured in New York and also here at the Pentagon. To answer your question, we were about 300 feet from the impact site, from the collapsed building side. Myself, and Al Wallace were standing outside when we saw the plane, not too far from where we're sitting right now. And as soon as we saw it, we started running towards the north side of the building. And that's when we heard the explosion and the incredible crash.
What was the biggest problem as a firefighter you faced?
Just dealing with all the people at once. There were so many people trying to get out, scared people, people that weren't not very injured, but just shaken up.
Obviously, you did no training for anything like this. Was there any thought of putting out fires?
As the plane came in, it took out our fire truck, destroyed the back end of it. We tried to put out a few spot fires underneath the truck and around the window that the people were exiting.
You've witnessed other aviation crash fires, right?
Correct.
What made this different?
Being right there, actually seeing it on the scene before it even happens. It was quite a scary scene.
How did the people react? We've heard stories all week about incredible acts of heroism and putting themselves secondary to others.
Well, you've heard acts like that, and there's miracles happening all over. I mean, the woman that went down 80 flights of stairs, and the man who went down through the elevator 20 flights and just walked out with minor bruises and injuries. Just been blessed, you know. Myself, Al Wallace, walked out with minor injuries. The third guy, Dennis Young, he walked out with absolutely nothing, not a scratch on him.
What injuries did you sustain?
Just minor flash burns. I got some burns on my arms, a couple stitches in the hand, abrasions from the fall, from the impact after the crash.
Mark, why do you fight fires?
It's been my career ever since I joined the military. Started off as crash fire rescue in the Marine Corps, and after that moved on to the civilian side, worked on air bases, worked on MCS Yuma, and then decided to transfer here.
I mean, to the layman, it's got to be one of the more harrowing occupations.
Oh, there's a lot of heroes out there. My job, you know, most people go through whole careers to be on incidents like this, and I wish that I rather not seen one like this.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks very much for joining us.
Thank you.
Mark Skipper, firefighter outside the Pentagon. Joining us now at the Armory in New York is David Vincent. He's a resident of Rochester, New York. His daughter, Melissa, 28 years old, was on the 102nd floor of the World Trade Center in Tower 1. She did make a 911 call from her cell phone. How do you know that, David? I know you see her holding her picture of your beautiful daughter, by the way.
Thank you very much, Larry. We know that because we went back through the cell phone provider to find out that information. We're still trying to get copies of the transcripts from the FBI and from the New York City Police to try and understand where she was at the building at the time that it was hit, where she was at 9:02. What we're asking for here, our family's asking for any information that has any relevance as to where Melissa was, in the building, outside the building, anybody that saw her after Tuesday at about 7:30 in the morning. We need to locate her. We don't know if she's down underneath in the underbelly of the building, maybe still in some of the voids that are there, or whether we should be looking in other places.
Who did Melissa work for?
Melissa worked for Alliance Consulting, Larry. They had a good share of the 102nd floor of the first tower on the World Trade Center.
Was she married?
No, Melissa wasn't married. She absolutely loved New York, loved being here, loved everything about it. Everybody here has been terrific in supporting us and trying to get her picture around and getting some information relative to her, get her missing persons reports and all of that taken together. But the only thing that's important in my life right now is to stay focused on how do I find my daughter, how do I get to where she is.
David, how did you hear about this? Where were you when it occurred?
Actually, Larry, I was at my office at Eastman Kodak Company. My son called me from his trading office. He was actually on the phone with somebody at the World Trade Center. They told him exactly what had happened, that a plane had just hit the building. He dropped the phone, called me. We both started calling both her cell phone, her home phone, and her phone at her business, trying to raise her. When that didn't work, we started calling her roommates to try to understand where was she. Did she go to the gym that morning? Did she go into work? We find out that she had an 8:45 standing meeting on Tuesday mornings. That's where we started to put a timeline together.
David, you still have hope?
You bet. I'm down here for the long term, Larry. I'm going to find my daughter. no matter what it takes, no matter what I have to do. There's only one thing in my life right now, and that's to bring her home.
Where's your wife?
My wife's at home with my 2 other children. They're working.
Thank you.
They're working the phones to the hospitals and whatnot. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you,
Larry.
David.
I appreciate your help today.
Thank you, David Vincent. We're going to spend our final moments with 3 friends of a terrific lady who died on American Airline Flight 77. Her husband was with us last night. They are in New York, Nancy Grace, the former prosecutor, now Court TV anchor, who appeared with Barbara Olson on this program often. As well in Washington, Cynthia Oxney, former federal prosecutor, Barbara's friend, frequently appeared with Barbara, attended the memorial service today. And here in Los Angeles, Mark Geragos, the defense attorney, who also frequently appeared. Mark, first for you. You and Barbara went at it lots of nights here.
Oh man, it's been 3 years, I guess, since she and I started that kind of frickin' frack of the right and the left, and I developed a real affection for her, as you know.
She for you.
And one of the first things I thought about was one of those evenings a couple of weeks ago. You remember China was going to be on here, coming on after us. And in the station break, she was insistent with you that you get a picture for one of Ted's daughters signed directly to her of the exactly.
You reminded
of the
me. I
wrestler.
never forgot that.
Yeah, and it was an amazing thing. And it just says so much about Barbara, and that and what Ted was talking about last night. The idea that she was so unflappable, and to be standing there on that plane, herded in the back, talking to Ted, asking, "What should I tell the pilot?"
Typical.
I mean, yeah, typical of Barbara.
Nancy, what's your memory tonight?
Well, Larry, Barbara and I actually started on opposite sides of the fence during impeachment, but then as the years progressed, as you know, we often joined together with each other, fighting criminal law issues, fighting perceived crime and injustice, against maneuvering the justice system. And one thing nobody can deny, no matter what she said, what always struck me, Larry, was that brilliant, that beaming smile. And even in the end, Barbara went down like the prize fighter she was, using her most powerful weapon, her mind, at the very end.
Cynthia, you were at the service today. I know she was a friend of yours. What was it like?
Well, I was obviously very sad. The most moving part of the service for me was hearing her brother, who I did not know. And it was amazing to me the number of things I learned about her, and what a missed opportunity it was for me not to know more about her. You know, I knew mostly about her from our TV appearances. She was an accomplished ballet dancer, and I learned that at her funeral. She loved country music, and I learned that at her funeral. And she had a yellow convertible as a kid, and I learned it at her funeral. And I felt such sadness at my missed opportunity, which can only be a billionfold for her family and close friends.
Oh, thank you, Cynthia. We know how hard this is for you. We're going to miss her, Mark. I mean,
we're going to miss her a lot.
And she went down a special way, as Nancy said, didn't
absolutely. She and the people who were on that plane in Pennsylvania, who still had their wits about them, and the firefighters and the policemen who've gone into these buildings, you know, and just not thinking about anything other than just saving people and how they were going to help. It's just it's something that's inspiring out of all of this tragedy.
And Nancy, panels will never be the same without Barbara Olson.
No, absolutely not. And you know, we all became a little family over the airwaves, and how much fun and how angry we all got together over every legal issue.
I know. Nancy Grace, Cynthia Oxney, Mark Geragos, thank you so much. We thought it appropriate we share these moments with you at the end of this program tonight. We'll be back, of course, tomorrow night. We'll be here 7 nights a week. Aaron Brown will be hosting next on CNN. We leave you with a look at Barbara's memorial service earlier today.
It was a spectacular love story. She his princess, he her prince.
And he will reign.